we're going to start the meeting at 6:04, and I need someone to make a motion to review and accept our agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. We do need to add one thing to our agenda, which is about our annual meeting. We are going to be putting that under governance process for tonight. I don't think there's anything else to add at this time. Okay, so all of those that approve the agenda, please press your green button or give me the thumbs up or something.
Let's see, where is that?
So Kevin and Bill, can you just, thanks Kevin. Bill, can you give me a thumbs up or? Oh, I can't, your video's not on.
Yeah, your video is not on. I'll send you a request to start it.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say that we have approved our agenda and move on.
Okay, I cannot send a request to start it, so.
Okay. So the next item is board meeting evaluation results from November 18th. I didn't actually look at those. The last time I looked at it, only one person had filled it out, and that wasn't me. So that's one thing we do need to discuss is that after every board meeting, that evaluation should be filled out almost within the next 24 hours so that we can make sure that we're being productive and staying on task, please.
We did have 6 fill it out at the end,
Okay.
Which is great. But yeah, I already sent the link to today so that you could do it at the end of this meeting.
Great. Board, let's talk. So communications with parents, citizens, and staff. We do have a lot of other people other than board members on. Thank you, principals, for joining us this evening. And Claire, I think you're out there. Nice to see you again. Does anybody have anything for public comment at this time? Okay, so I will tell you that we did have a board Let's Talk communication that came in regarding return to school. It was one person who was concerned about the fact that we were going back in person and they wanted to make sure that everyone was going to be safe. So we answered that hopefully to their satisfaction. Moving on to the consent agenda, I need someone to make a motion.
So moved.
Thanks. Is there a second?
Barbara's waving.
Great. All of those that approve the consent agenda, please press the green button or the red button saying that you do not agree. Just waiting on Barbara. Perfect. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're going to move into our global ends monitoring, restorative justice action plan, interim global ends report. So I will pass this off to Jean.
So as part of our global ends, as we're addressing your global ends, one of the things that we are signing on to is, or have been doing professional development in, is restorative practices. And I know that's something that the board has been interested in and interested in talking about. So I provided for you tonight our action plan. This is not for you to take action on. This is what we have developed and we submit to the state of Vermont. And we are in our initial phase of developing the capacity. We've done training over the last year. Most schools are doing some form of restorative justice circles. If you as a board are interested, we could make this a PD topic for a second meeting of the month, and I would invite in the some of the folks who's on our district team to actually show you what a restorative circle is like and to answer your questions. But I wanted to give you some basic information tonight.
Does anybody have any questions for Jean?
Gene, I don't understand the basic lingo. I read it and I guess first question is what a circle is.
Right. Well, yeah, and to explain all the basic lingo, we really should invite them in. This plan was not written for you. This plan was written for the state. But so it's having an understanding of what a circle is. SEL is social emotional learning, by the way, that one I can tell you.
Thanks.
But it's a facilitated discussion around a certain topic when you're doing a circle. And I guess, again, the best thing to do would be to perhaps schedule if you're interested.
Okay, thanks.
If I may, if you're not speaking, could you please mute, especially the folks who came in? And I would like, Lori, if I may, to acknowledge that we have some administrators on the call, and
Yes,
they're here on their evening. So we have Judy Pulsifer, principal at Neshabie, Debbie Alexander, principal at Lothrop Elementary, Jeff Lawrence, associate principal at Otter Valley. I think that's who I see right now from administration. And they're joining you particularly because we start a budget conversation later tonight, but also I'm sure it's just that they've missed spending time with you. So back to the restorative circles and restorative practices. Would you like it to be a future topic? Okay, looks like there's some agreement there. So maybe at the end of the meeting, we can figure out, oh, and Brenda just joined us as well. Thank you, Brenda. Maybe we could figure out where in the work plan you'd like to put it.
Perfect. Thank you. Our next item tonight is to go over monitoring reports. Do we want to do that now, Jean, or do we want to go over the budget so that our admin don't have to stay and listen to us drone on?
I think they might appreciate that if you're willing to move the budget up earlier.
Okay, so since Brenda is here with us, unless somebody else has a issue with that, I'm going to ask that we go over the first draft of the budget so that we don't have to hold everybody here.
And
okay,
I need to, Brenda, I can pull up the PowerPoint. If you give me just a second, share. No. No, you don't want me to print it. All right, that didn't work. Let me go back to it. Now I think it'll work. Okay, Brenda, you with us?
Yes, I am. Do you want to start and then
Yes.
Pass it to me when you're ready?
Yes. I had this
But you'll
trouble
keep
before.
banning. You'll keep advancing the slides, right?
Well, yes, but I had this trouble before where they don't seem to want to follow my commands. Oh, look, I found, okay, I figured out where I could do it. Okay, so yes. So as we, excuse me, as we develop the budget, we start with these things in mind. Our Otter Valley ends policy, the Rutland Northeast district-wide goals, equity of opportunity for student achievement, and efficiency in delivery, which also fits into the ends policy. So just as a reminder, your ends policy says that that your school district exists so that all enrolled in students are empowered with the knowledge, skills, and attributes needed to be successful and contributing citizens of a global society by way of the resources invested by the communities. And you specifically spoke to dispositions for lifelong learners through transferable skills, academic proficiency, social, emotional, and personal development, and citizenship. Our Rutland Northeast goals, which again were intended to be long-term goals, I believe this is year 3, are to continuously improve our instructional practices to meet the needs of all students, provide systematic academic and emotional interventions and supports for improved student achievement, and focus on primary early literacy, with literacy taught across the curriculum pre-K to 12, but really focusing on that K1-2 to try to get every student on grade level by the end of grade 2. Unfortunately, last year's tests would have been the second year of results since we began this focus, and there were no SBAC tests given. We do have some literacy tests, and as I'm pulling together data for you, you will see that. Our budget process is, first, our goal is to present a budget to the community that is efficient, sustainable, and focuses on student learning and equitable outcomes as you identified in the ends policy. So in October and November, you reviewed the financial monitoring report, you set a governance budget parameters, and discussed negotiation, salary, and benefit parameters. Tonight, you're getting an initial budget proposal. At your next 2 meetings, you would be focusing on getting input from the community and discussing among yourselves whether or not the budget meets the goals that you set for it, if you need to make any changes, etc. You probably should tonight in your work plan schedule a special budget meeting for January 13th, because we need to have it adopted by January 15th to meet our deadlines for warnings, postings, all those things. Normally you would meet the next week, but that's just a tad late this year. So if you don't need that special meeting, we'd cancel it, but I'd really appreciate it if you would schedule one. So then we move into our numbers and the data that goes behind what we're doing. Starting with Lothrop, it's important to note, well, first of all, it's important to note that this year's census numbers are affected by COVID. So, and the state is aware of that because some families chose to homeschool as opposed to return, and the hope is that they will return. And in fact, the state addressed this by telling us, by the legislature already approving that last year's ADM will remain stable for this year's budgeting purposes, as opposed to who returned and who didn't return. So as a result, we took last year's numbers and rolled them forward a year to project our students for next year, because that is the best information that we have. Enrollment at Lothrop is anticipated to drop by 10 students as we graduate more than what are coming in currently, which makes for class size challenges and student-teacher ratios on the low end of our policy. We are planning on reducing one position from Lothrop currently, but it's a federally funded interventionist position, as opposed to a classroom teacher. We could not find a way, even though we're dropping by 10 students, and the way it's spread apart, it was not possible to identify a way of reducing a classroom teacher and not shooting our class sizes up above our policy. It just doesn't work out. But we will be reducing one federally funded interventionist position based on their enrollment poverty numbers and the fact that assumed federal resources. And you will have this PowerPoint given to you after tonight, so you can dig into it. Neshabie census, we are adding one classroom teacher as we graduate a small class of 36, but welcome in approximately 53. We knew this 2 to 3 years ago. We knew that we had a smaller bubble moving through the school, and we reduced staff downward a couple of years ago, anticipating returning that staff back in the coming year. So this enrollment, even with the teacher added, does push the NESU class size towards the top of our policy range. And, there might be a little bit of flexibility around 3 and 4, but not, and the way they schedule, but not really. So if you know anybody with fourth graders moving into the district, we might want to direct them to other towns. Just kidding. Numbers can always change too over the summer. This is just our best guess. Otter Creek Academy, which currently is Leicester School, serving all 3 towns. There are no specific changes expected in the coming year. Having the full-time counselor, which the board put into place, has made a significant difference, as has having the kids under one roof. In addition, having a full-time nurse has been a godsend this year. You will not see us asking to increase for the full-time nurse in this particular budget, our local budget, because it is COVID funding that is paying for the nurse this year. And if that continues to be a need to have a full-time nurse because of wherever we are in the midst of the pandemic, it is our hope that there would be COVID funding of federal funds available or state funds available for that again. But if we put it in the budget, we would not be able to access them. So this is a little bit of a sticky area that right now we're not asking local dollars to increase the nurse or to keep a full-time nurse at Otter Creek Academy. However, we may end up needing to do so later on, and we're aware of that and are keeping an eye on that. We're also monitoring their need for more intervention time, which is federally funded, kind of pushing the envelope this year with as many kids. Otter Creek might be our school with our smallest census, but it also has the highest poverty. So we do need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the kids. And right now with the interventionist that we have, a 0.7, it's pushing the envelope. Otter Valley Union High School, middle school, high school. We added, well, our population, our enrollment is expected to remain fairly stable, but shifting more into the high school where it's been heavy in the middle school the last couple of years, which again is what we expected. As that small bubble moves out of NESU, for example, you see it moving into the high school as a smaller bubble. But overall, we think that we will remain fairly stable in our enrollment. This year, we started to add interventionists and academic interventionists, and we can already see a difference with our first round of assessments that you got to see at the last meeting. We could easily identify who needs additional support, and we're able to schedule that, and we'll be able to use the data to make sure that we're moving those students forward. We do need to increase that intervention support for next year as it moves into the high school. We focused on middle school this year. We are not adding necessarily to this budget to make that happen, but we are looking at other areas within the budget where we might be able to reassign some funds to bring in ideally 2, but at least 1 interventionist at the high school level. So although this is not locally funded, this is your after-school reserve fund, I do like to give you an update on where we stand with that. Essentially, there's no change in the after-school fund balance, both because we did not run a summer program this past year due to COVID, and also because we did not have to put any more, we did not have you put any more funds into the reserve fund. So we're holding steady.
It's still a check. Yes, that's mine. That's mine.
Somebody's unmuted. Hello, somebody's unmuted and I can't tell because I'm screen sharing, so I can't help you. So the proposed program budget changes from the current FY20 budget to the FY21 budget are captured on this screen. Lothrop increased 1 primary teacher that was not in the current year's budget, and reduced one paraeducator based on their enrollments in the primary grades. Our numbers were too high. So that ended up being a shift in funds. And so I pointed out here because you will see a change in budget year to budget year when we move that position where it belongs. Neshabe, we are planning to increase by one classroom teacher. Otter Creek Academy ended up reducing one school secretary position when the Sudbury administrative assistant accepted a paraeducator position elsewhere in the district. We did not refill that position since Sudbury was not going to be used as a student home base this year. The RNESU Board approved 5 pre-K lottery placements for the current school year. The RNESU, they said it was a 1-year pilot. We don't know if they're going to continue it or not. They haven't had the discussion yet. And so we went ahead and added the cost of that to this budget so that we're prepared if it does continue. Otter Valley added the budget added an interventionist, but then we also took a math teacher who was special ed funded that the school had been paying for out of build back dollars, where even though he's special ed funded, the school is using him for non-special ed duties. And so the school has to pay for that. We shifted that into a real local position. So it's actually almost a trade of dollars, but we're putting it in the budget in the right place. And so again, you would see a change in that particular line. Otter Valley's vocational cost, we don't have that data yet, so we estimated at about 5% over this year's budget. RNESU is still discussing their budget. They're meeting again on December 16th. And we anticipate that the assessments coming out of Rutland Northeast will be level funded. So we are not budgeting an increase in central office assessments. This summary also includes it focuses on smaller primary class sizes so that we can focus on the primary literacy instruction. It is designed to ensure equity of services across the schools. One example of that is looking at Lothrop's numbers and needs and the amount of interventionists they had, and also looking at OCA and what they need. So we're making those shifts where the student population need exists. This includes the salaries and benefits as the board approved, line by line adjustments to utilities, supplies, and other non-program costs were based on prior spending and estimated increases and trends. And then I just want to point out that we have been adjusting staffing to meet the needs of the merged district over the past few years. So we're done with that now, and we can turn our attention to supporting the staffing needed to support the students to achieve academically. So in other words, you've done a great deal of what was called right sizing. And so now we're focusing on what is it that we actually need to do what you have the task you have set up for us. There is missing information. This is always just an initial draft, and a lot of this information you don't get until later. So the revenues don't come until late December. Expenditures like vocational education and assessments don't come until mid to late December. Brenda, there's a typo on equalized pupils. The equalized pupils are not expected to shift this year because the legislature has held us harmless. Estimated tax rate does not come until mid to late December. CLAs do not come until late December. And equalized pupils, again, are be confirmed in late December. So it's not really until your January 6th meeting that you have the rest of the pie given to you so that you know what you're looking at right tonight is an expense budget. But the impact of all of this on that expense budget, you won't have until January because the state does not provide it until the end of December. So this is just an initial presentation. It's also important to point out that this budget does not include any of the costs that we incurred this year due to COVID, which are being funded elsewhere, such as our 15 floating subs, 5 additional daytime custodians, the Otter Creek Academy nurse, our improvements to ventilation, our supplies for disinfection and sanitation, the technology hardware investments, which I had asked you for out of the surplus, we are able to fund out of COVID dollars, federal dollars. So that did not come out of the surplus. And the technology data plans and service. So all of these costs right now are being covered outside of the local budget, and they are not in tonight's budget presentation, but I did not want you to not be aware of them because they were significant this year. And this talks a little bit about what those COVID monies are. Brenda, this might be a good time to turn it to you.
Thanks, Jean. So this is it. All grants are administered at the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union level, and we did share this with the Rutland Northeast Board at the November budget meeting, at their November budget meeting. But we do think it's important for you to just have an understanding, because we are all hearing about these funds and where they're going and what they are for. So we have not received grant awards on many of these, but we have received we've not received our grant reward on number one, the biggest one, the almost $7 million, but we have no expectation. We have every expectation that it will be approved. So we have no real fears for it. It just hasn't come through the paperwork yet. And that needs to be spent by December 31st. Thankfully, the paperwork doesn't have to be submitted to them until April 1st. But that will cover the cost on the preceding slide from July to December. We have received the approval and have spent the summer food services, and that was just the cost associated with delivering pickup meals to school sites. So it was out to communities so that families that needed that could go to their home school to get free meals. We have recently applied for, Jean just sent me a message, sorry. I have to put her on mute. We have recently applied for and received a food service grant to buy equipment to help with remote delivery and serving hot foods under the new environment with reusable containers. We have received and applied for and will be funded approximately $20,000 for HVAC improvements at the high school. We then have $615,000 or just shy of $615,000 in Esser Funds. These are title funds. These are the funds that you've probably heard the most about. They actually run until June 30th. So they will fund our expenditures from January to June. And then ongoing, with the Family First Coronavirus Response Act is up to 2 weeks worth of leave time for anybody who has to quarantine according to state rules and guidelines, as well as if they have any symptoms of the virus or the virus. And while we don't get reimbursed for that leave time because it is guaranteed paid leave for them, we do get a little bit of a benefit that we don't have to pay the 7.65% health payroll taxes. So that's extremely minor, but we just wanted to give you a heads up. We are certainly monitoring, watching, and looking into and applying for all grants that are applicable to us and that can be used. Thanks, Jean. So the budget, the first draft of the budget, again, as Jean said, this is expenditures only. So this is not what your tax rate is based on, is up 2.91%. And here's just a little chart kind of telling you where and what. So in the next few charts, we'll show you the breakdown in the budget in various different points just so that you can look at it from different angles. So this is by function, which is what service are we buying? So you'll notice on the left that the biggest investment, of course, is direct instruction. So that would include all of our teachers, our classroom teachers, our para educators, and our special education and special education services. And that is the biggest piece of our increase. You can see way over on the right that is $489,000 of our $592,000 increase. Student support services would be things like the nurse and guidance, instructional throughout all of the Otter Valley District schools. Instructional staff support is library and media, understanding that technology is in the Rutland Northeast budget, not in this budget. General and administration is Jean's office and curriculum. School administration, of course, is the school offices. Fiscal services is all of the technology is embedded into fiscal services and the business office. Facilities, of course, is the facilities of all of our schools. Transportation is both the to and from school assessment, as well as the cost associated with Stafford Run, Hannaford Run, late runs, sports runs, that type of thing. And then debt service, of course, is the bonds on our buildings. We have bonds at Lothrop, Neshabie, and Otter Valley for biomass conversions. And we still have an outstanding bond at Whiting for their septic system sewer upgrade.
And before I move on, I just want to point out that last year, this budget increase was 2.21%. So it is just slightly above last year's increase. And maybe that seemed like there was something else, but I can't think what it is.
And so this is taking a look at the same budget, same numbers, just from a different aspect. And that is, so with our funds, what are we buying versus what department are we funding? So you can see again that our biggest investment and our biggest change is in our people. Salaries and benefits are the top of the 592,000, 145,000, and 302. So the biggest majority of that is in salaries and benefits. As Jean explained in a previous slide, the salaries are budgeted per your recommendations, and the benefits are budgeted according to the VHI filed rate with DFR and the arbitration that goes into play on January 1st. That did not affect us a whole lot. The arbitration did not really have a huge negative effect on us, but the VHI health, the premiums are increasing approximately 9.8%. And so that increase, we are no longer allowed to, or for this budget year, we're not allowed to shift any of that increase to employees. So we are responsible to pay that increase. Purchase services is things like vocational education, tuition, that type of, oh no, I'm sorry. Purchase services. Oh, I'm sorry. Purchase services are really contracted services. So these are hired professionals that come in to help support our schools, Rutland mental health contracts, service contracts on the boiler, that type of thing. Repairs and maintenance are just that. They're actual physical repairs and maintenance to whether it's copy equipment or I better talk quicker, right, Lori? Or the buildings. Tuition and travel, it's odd that they lump them together, but that tuition number does include our tuitions for vocational education. That's the biggest component of that. Supplies and utilities, it's the biggest component of that is utilities, which would be fuel and electric is classified as a supply. The driver's ed car, that's just lease payments on the driver's ed car. And then, of course, principal and interest is the same as debt service. So this is just another way to look at that budget, from a percentage point, where are our dollars going? And so you can see over here on the right that instruction is 61% of our dollars. Student support, instructional staff support, again, that's library and media. The actual physical buildings and the transportation for students makes up 84% of our budget. The other 16% of our budget comes from board and general administration. And of that 8%, technology is the biggest piece of that. Then school administration, so that's the offices in each of the schools, and then debt service. And this is, kind of a trend, a look at trends. And so this is where did we spend our money in fiscal year 20, which was last year, and where did we plan on spending it this year, and what are we proposing? And you can see from this graph kind of that salaries and benefits have gradual, steady increases, as does tuition and travel. All three of those are obviously human resources, which is our biggest investment. Then purchase services, repairs, supplies and utilities, the driver's ed car, and principal and interest is pretty flat over the years.
If anybody knows what that message means, I'm happy to do what it says, but I don't know what it means.
I thought it was because I had the slides open, so I closed the slides.
Yeah, I don't know what it means. That's all right. We're at the end of the slideshow. I have emailed the slideshow to each of you already, and Charlene. And the principals, I believe, received it earlier today. And this will be posted on the web tomorrow.
I spent most of the slideshow trying to figure out how to get rid of it myself.
I've never seen it before. I don't know what window, what shared application. So there, it's gone now. So questions. One question that came in through the chat was, what are we doing with Sudbury? You're correct. There's nothing in this budget that addresses Sudbury directly. The students at Otter Creek Academy are not increasing. In fact, they're slightly declining. So we're not planning on sending a class back to Otter Creek Academy next year. We're able to stay at Leicester. This year, the 5th and 6th, I'm not sure about the 3rd and 4th grades, are using Sudbury School as an experiential learning center. And Moose Lamoo also is considering use of it, especially as other options get difficult for them. So right now it's being used by classes anywhere in the district who would like to use it as an experiential learning center. Angela asks, why is facilities increasing so much next year? Brenda?
Jean, can you go back a couple of slides? Actually, no, let me look at this. I didn't notice that it was.
Was what? Oh, okay.
It was
like
increasing by 3.5%.
Yeah.
So the reason that it's increased, which is only $66,000, one of the blessings and the curse of percentages, it's 66,000 on its current, and the biggest component of facilities is fuel, heating, and electricity. So when we look at the trends, we kind of skipped 2020 because those factors were not really, 3.5 months of those factors were affected by the school closure. So I looked at the facility spending and the costs of those services over the prior 3 years, and then kind of estimated an average and added for cost of living increases. We do know that the rates go up every year. So I didn't, again, I'm not a fan of percentages because I think they're misleading. Looks like it went up 3.48%. It went up $66,000 of the 592.
Mike has his hand raised.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious on the, there was what, if you were, if you had to be out for the 2 weeks because you had to, what do you call it?
Quarantine?
Quarantine, thank you.
Sure.
Is that because, is it a family leave because of being more than five days?
No. Go ahead, Brenda.
Okay, the CARES Act requires us, based on the size of our school district, size of the number of employees we have, to pay employees for up to 2 weeks, 10 days, 80 hours for any leave that they have to take in addition to, so they have to take that first. And that's a new leave, that's a new benefit. That's not something that we would normally have in our budget, but it is something we have to accommodate. The benefit that we get from that, private employers can actually be refunded those amounts. Public employers can only be refunded the amount that we pay on their payroll taxes associated with that. So we work very closely with our employees, and if and when they have to be quarantined versus sick, thankfully we haven't had any that were sick. If they have to be quarantined and we can provide remote opportunities for them, we do that so that they don't tap necessarily into that, for lack of a better word, free 80 hours.
Yeah, because I was also wondering, I don't know if we have policy or if we can put in policy, but can you be out for 5 days, then get a test? Tests are free.
Yes.
Yes.
And come back.
Yes.
Tests for all of our employees, for all of Vermont, tests are free. And most of our folks are willing, you have to wait 7 days. So if you quarantine for 7 days and then have a negative test, you can come back earlier. And I understand that CDC is changing its definition now, but that hasn't really trickled down to us. But that's the way it works, and most people are doing it that way. Also, because they want to know. Barry's hand is up.
Yeah, Jean or Brenda, either one. Looking at the expense piece here, 2.9%. And in the beginning of the presentation, we talked about this is only a portion of our overall budget and the unknowns that still we won't know from the state, coming down from the state till later. Is there any intuition or senses around what's the state of the state, so to speak, with respect to the education fund and what that might look like, either just up or down?
So currently, the state still expects to be in deficit because of lack of other revenues coming into the state. But there is so very much unknown what federal supports will happen. Revenues came in higher than anticipated when the state first predicted a deficit. It's really unknown. What we do know is things are going to be very tight. We just don't know what level of world we're going to be in yet.
The biggest hole in this budget in regards to expenses, though, I think is vocational education. So, and I don't know or feel how much that could really sway the overall. I think this picture is pretty close. What I cannot begin to really do is convert this to a tax rate into what this really means in taxes yet, because of the other missing pieces. But in regards to the services, the scope of our programs, I think this captures pretty much everything. That the only thing that really can change enough, and I honestly don't think it could really move the needle a whole lot, although I could be surprised, is vocational education. So we generally see that kind of level, and we pay for vocational education based on an average of the last 6 months of students who attend vocational centers. So if we've seen our vocational enrollment spike or decrease, we might see this. But even if it's a recent one that just happened this semester or last semester and this semester, it's, that's only 1/3 of the last 6 semesters. So it really kind of levels off those, heartbeat like jumps up and down on vocational education.
Brenda, in your first statement, you said the last 6 months. You meant the last 6 semesters.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've been out of touch for a while, but I didn't think we'd gone to months.
I feel like it's March 17th or 18th. So, yeah.
Did it.
More questions?
I'm not hearing any other questions.
One,
Obviously, this is, oh, go ahead.
I'm new to Vermont, so I just wonder if there's anything kind of off the grid that schools are going to do in Vermont, like solar, to help out with utilities. Is there any plan for that?
Yes, we already do. Brenda, you want to speak to that? And also Brenda is bringing coming forward tonight, asking for permission to refinance some of our debt as well, to capture some of those savings. But Brenda, you want to talk about solar?
Yes. So we have, since 2015, we have implemented in our largest schools, which is every school except Otter Creek Academy's buildings, biomass boilers. And at Otter Valley, we put in quite a beautiful array of solar on our roof. Don't know if you've noticed it when you drive by the high school. You can see that there's quite a bit of solar. That there's a difference in solar. Just to let everyone know, we own those solar panels, so we get the full benefit of them. It's not like buying into a solar farm, which is what a lot of people might do individually. And so we've been finding that the Otter Valley Solar, was financed, the Otter Valley project was financed with the savings that we saw in energy by shifting away from fossil fuels to wood pellets, and also away from electricity to a pure electric user to a generator. And the cost that we've seen in utilities actually paid for the construction. So our budget remained flat, the construction cost and the improvements were sawed off. We continue to look at that. We actually met with the same vendor, Johnson Controls, earlier this fall. We just don't feel that under this environment with this much uncertainty, now's a good time to make that leap, to make sure that we're still staying current with the best way to keep our facilities efficient. But we definitely spend time and focus energy on that.
Thank you very much. Nice job.
It's actually fun to kind of look at the December or the June Otter Valley bills and realize that, in June we pay a electric bill of like 27 cents.
Claire, it's nice to have somebody with fresh ears ask questions. So
That's okay. I got my solar too.
Great. Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none. This is, of course, our first draft. It will probably be updated at our next meeting in January. Maybe we'll talk about it in 2 weeks. I'm not sure. Only if there's significant movement, Brenda, probably.
right.
Yeah.
We'll revisit it at least with whatever new information that we have. It also is a good time to put out word to the community, or do you want to wait until January for that, so that they come and ask questions? Or usually you take 2 meetings.
Yeah, we usually do that, and then it's up to the board. I have no preference. Okay, so we'll talk about this again in our meeting in 2 weeks. We should probably put something in the paper to indicate what our first draft is, and then see if we can get some people to come to the table.
Okay. And if it's possible, when you're looking at the agenda, Brenda also would be helpful for the corporate resolution and policy 2.8.11. So I don't know if you're willing to adjust those to let her go earlier too.
Well, yeah, while she's here, why don't we go ahead and do the corporate resolution and both of those. And then, but we can let the admin go if they would like to. And I want to thank them for being here and listening to that. So, okay, so we're moving.
Jeff, I'm sorry, Jeff, are you saying goodbye or saying something? Okay, thank you for coming. See what happens when you try to quietly sneak away?
So let's talk about the corporate resolution to refinance the capital lease titled OVUHS 2015 Performance Contract, Pellet Boiler and Solar Project. It was in your packet, the information about the payoff to this, I think it was Stellar Corporation. But I'll turn it over to Brenda to discuss.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. It's an easy question, and our vendor, this was the biomass boiler funding, and our vendor is watching the interest rates in the market. And because this was done as a performance contract, so it was done as a long-term capital lease, we have the ability to act independently and refinance when rates have reduced. And as you all know, with COVID-19, one of the benefits is the rates have reduced. And so she did some numbers and looked at it and realized that we could refinance for a much lower rate, approximately 3.02 or 3.03. And over the life, the remaining life of the lease, which is 14 years, we would save $50,000. So it's not a $50,000 immediate savings. It's over the life of the lease, but it is still at a lower rate and long-term savings investment into the future. So we wanted to bring it to your attention and ask for your blessing to move forward with refinancing.
So I do have a question about that. I noticed that there's a prepayment penalty of $57,000. So is that $50,000 saving going to the prepayment penalty, or is that in addition to paying that penalty?
That would be in addition. The $50,000 savings is in addition to.
Okay, so okay.
Would they be willing to waive that, seeing how we're refinancing and not some?
I doubt it. We can ask. I'd be very surprised from my banker friend.
I wouldn't be too surprised.
Will there be a prepayment penalty when we refinance if we were to do this again in the future?
It's hard because this is a little chicken before the egg. So until the board really says yes, go ahead and go forth and seek. We only can get estimates. You can't actually get this is the vendor, the financing agency we want to work with, and read the fine print.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions? I'm not seeing anybody. So actually, we probably should have had a motion to discuss this. So does someone want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. So is there any other discussion about this before we go to vote?
Who did the second?
Angela.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so all those in favor, please press your green buttons or smile at me or wave or whatever. And if you don't approve, you can press the red button. Okay, it looks like it's unanimous. Great. Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the other one that Brenda could be helpful with is if you are planning on discussing policy 2.811, considering changing the amount of gifts to be reported to the board.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to just go ahead and do that while she's here. Okay,
I did provide to you our policy on capitalization of assets if you want to reference it.
Okay, so to find out if we want to think about changing this, we should probably have a motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, what's your motion? Do you want to change it? And if you do want to change it to
yeah,
what?
change it.
To what? So right now it says that a gift of over $5,000 is
to the board.
So, right, to the board.
Or to the district.
Yeah. So if you want to change that, you would have to put in a dollar amount of some sort.
Can't hear you, Mike. I don't know what happened to your volume. No.
Type it into the chat, Mike. We can't hear you.
Some reason it went.
Laura, if I can just add, it currently reads $5,000, a value of $5,000, unless it's actually real property, which is land. And that doesn't matter what the value is, it would always be reported.
Right, okay. Thank you, Brenda.
While we're waiting for the motion, I know we had this discussion, but I really don't remember it very well in the reasoning behind the change. Could you give us a quick recap?
I think I started this.
There's not a recommendation on the part of administration, so it's totally a board. We recommend the policy stand as is.
So my background.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, there.
Yes.
Okay.
Mike,
No,
thank you.
so what I was saying before was, I know Angela brought it up, so I didn't know if we were looking at something to reduce. I think it was something we wanted to reduce, if I was correct.
Right, that was right. So the question is are you reducing it to 2,500? Are you reducing it to any gift over 0? So I would like a number or something, because otherwise the motion doesn't make any sense.
I would say over at least 2,000.
Oh,
We lost you again.
I think he said 2,000.
Yes, I did.
thank you. Okay, so 2,000. So then we would need a second to that motion. I'm seeing Kevin. So
Kevin said yes.
Kevin is making a motion. Okay, so now we can actually talk about it. So
can I give you a little bit of history of why I brought it up a while ago?
Yep, go for it.
So in many businesses that I've worked for, getting any kind of gifts or any kind of monetary value items is like a no-no well, since probably the last 10 years. It really, if we get anything free or if we get anything that's in lieu of gifts, even down to getting a bottle of wine, it's construed as bribery. It can be construed as many different things. So I find it really hard to have any monetary value on it at all. I think it should be 0.
Angela, but you're talking about gifts to actual people, is that correct?
We
do have a policy that speaks to what employees can receive. That's a whole different policy, and I think it's $100 value, and that's because quite often you go to a workshop and somebody and there's something there, and so 0 was too difficult to manage, but we made it very, very low. So an individual employee, any individual employee, may not accept anything with a monetary value of over, I believe it's 100. This policy speaks to what the district receives as a gift. So for example, if the district receives student activities, fundraisers, booster money, time and service donations, building the press box. It could even be something as simple as money in lieu of flowers for a memorial or a new scholarship, or the 1,500 or so masks that we received as gifts over the summer
That was
for
free.
students and staff. And the reason that, I don't know, two things. 5,000 is not a magic number, except that it's related to federal and state laws and your own policy and capitalization of assets. But, you know, I don't think 2,000 would be unreasonable, but
So we're saying 5,000, you're allowed to receive 5,000 and not be documented anywhere.
according to federal and
No. We acknowledge every single gift
Yes.
that is monetary. So I think we're
I'm just saying
parsing,
per policy.
right.
You don't really have to.
This board talks about not whether we receive a gift, but what we make sure we report to you that we've received. So for example, we regularly will receive, a longtime teacher dies and they have all of the in payment in lieu of money in lieu of flowers go to, the activities fund, the athletics fund, the booster club, the press box, whatever things we might have. So that type of thing, we as a board are not required to report. We as administration are not required to report to you. We often do, but we're not required to. But we are still following all accounting procedures. So it's still reflected in our financial statements as a deposit. It is still reflected as a donation, and it is always and only for the benefit of the school district that we're talking about with this policy. So as Jean said, one of the things, if it was zero, and I don't think that's what you're talking about, that would be that you would tie our hands on being able to accept masks, for example, and accept volunteers on field trips, because that's a type of donation in time. So when this policy was written multiple years ago, I'm not sure the date on it, I don't have it in front of me.
This is one of our policy governance policies. It's only 3 years old.
Right. So it was written as to when is it our administration's responsibility to make sure the board knows a gift was received. And we chose the $5,000 limit because that matched our capitalization limit. So if we receive 6 computers that are worth $1,000 each, then that would be reported to you because the gift was $6,000. If we received 3 of them that were worth $1,000 each, we might report it to you, but according to policy governance, it wouldn't be an obligation to report. Does that make sense?
Is it a cumulative amount? So if someone say a teacher passes away, then you get, say, it wouldn't happen, but 6 $1,000 donations on behalf of that teacher. Would that include 6,000, or would it be 6 individual $1,000 donations?
Right. So I haven't read the policy governance interpretation of that policy, but in the superintendent's interpretation, she would define that. She would say that if it was a cumulative gift in recognition of this one person, then it might be. I think of things like walking stick theater, and I think of things like, donations that students might get to go to Scotland, families that might go and be chaperones and pay for on their dime. I worry about some of those more intangible, very important and welcomed gifts being able to capture and value, but it would be defined in the interpretation of the policy as to how that $5,000 is determined.
Has anybody looked at the law?
Say that again, Bill?
Has anybody looked at the law?
The wall?
The law, LAW.
Law.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
And we referenced it in, I also gave you policy DID, which speaks to 2 CFR 200.33. And it's the capitalization of assets. And that's where we took our $5,000 amount from.
Okay, did you look at the Vermont statutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and that's where we have to, that's where the report of real property has to happen regardless of its value. So if somebody gives us swampland that's not worth anything and we accept that gift, that's a required reporting to the board. So just a reminder, this is policy governance policy. This doesn't say we can't accept the gift. This is saying that as administration, we're responsible to make sure you are aware of this gift.
And just to clarify, because policy governance is not fully well understood, it's your policy, but it basically delineates under policy governance what is the role of the board and what is the role of the administration. And so you can change the amount, or as Angela's suggesting in the chat, you can look at the wording of this entire policy to make sure it's clearer to you as to what the $5,000 limit is set on. I'm pulling up the policies now.
All right, so Bonnie has a question.
Have we had any difficulty with this?
No.
Is this an area we're trying to clean up because it's problematic?
No.
Okay.
Claire, I saw your hand raised.
Okay, just a quick one. I think I understood Brenda to say that you are documenting everything anyway, whether you tell the board or not. So does the board know where that is? So the board could go and see.
Generally speaking, anything of any significance, I tell the board anyway. For example, I told you about the 1,500 masks. I could not begin to estimate what the value of those masks are. And like Brenda said, it would really tie my hands to do so. I'd have to go out and do
I can tell you.
I know. I mean,
$8 for 50.
Yeah.
So Claire, in the financial statements, there is a line item called donations.
Yes.
Okay, so people could, basically you all could go to that place and see everything that was donated to the best of your ability to document and describe what it was and the value. Is that correct? Is that sort of?
Not to that level of detail, but enough to raise questions like, well, how did we possibly get?
Right. This just sounds like one of those things where it's not a problem until it is. So I don't know. I always think it's best to be safe so you don't have to deal with that. Where did it come from and who did what with it? So if you all have a place where you could sort of see it, then.
I'm going to see if I can pull up the policy for you, but this policy is actually, this section is under the communication and support to the board. And this particular policy speaks about what the superintendent needs to make sure is the board is informed about. And this is number 11 under that. And it says that the superintendent must, if I reverse the language, because I know people have trouble with the language of policy governance. If we have significant gifts, then the superintendent must inform the board of those significant gifts within a timely manner. That's the policy that's in place. So thinking of how it's not perfectly clear to you, maybe it's just adding the words of all significant gifts to the district and putting that language in there. I don't think I'm going to keep looking for managing the meeting and looking for that at the same time is hard.
I have it in case you want.
Yeah, I like
So
that
Mike
idea.
has a question, and then so let's let Mike speak, and then
Well,
I'm not sure if it was Kevin or Barbara who raised their hand first.
I think Barbara, I was just wondering if based on not understanding the language, am I able to withdraw my motion?
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, that changes things because then that means that nobody can talk anymore.
Right, we need to finish the
So-
discussion
Okay,
and then
well,
can we
that's what I'm
vote
saying.
on it?
That's what I was saying. Let's finish the discussion first and
And then we'll just
Barbara
vote
go.
it down or not.
Okay, that's fine.
I did
All right.
find it. I'm going
So
to pull it up for you.
Okay,
That
so
was-
Barbara, go ahead.
That was all I was going to do was read the policy because I've managed to pull it up, but if Jean's got it, go for it.
Yep.
So while you're looking for that, Kevin, what did you have to say?
So it was a question for Brenda. Let's say we set the number at 0. Are you concerned you'd have to give us a list of everybody who sold pizza at halftime at a basketball game?
Absolutely, that would be my concern. That would be my concern. And, there's things that you could do in regards to, there's things I don't know. There's donations that come in to the student activities accounts. Somebody might be selling candles and they say, here's an extra $50, just put it to the cause. If you write that policy such that that's something that I need to report to you, I currently don't even know that information. So that is my concern.
I would just offer on that point. I don't think the board needs to know that information. If somebody gives you $50 for the good of the cause, I can't imagine why we would care hearing about that.
So if I could bring you to the policy so you could visually see it, it's policy 2.8, communication support to the board. The superintendent shall not cause or allow the board to be uninformed or unsupported. And furthermore, shall not, and then these are all the things the superintendent cannot do. And 11 is shall not allow the board to be uninformed in a timely manner of all significant gifts. And my interpretation was 5,000, and my rationalization of the interpretation was the connection to the federal and state laws and your policy and capital assets. But the discussion I'm hearing is that the assumption was made all gifts, such as a gift to an employee, such as going to a conference and getting a bottle of wine. It's never happened to me, but it could, who knows? So maybe it's a clarity that you're looking for around, and I made the assumption in my interpretation that we're talking about gifts to the district. Maybe that's the clarity that you need in the actual language, is that it's gifts to the district. You already have a policy that's not policy governance that's required by federal law about employees, individual employees, and that already exists. But this, and that's why I made the assumption or the interpretation this is about to the district. But maybe putting those words in this policy would make it even more clear take it out of the reasonable interpretation realm and make it very clear.
Yeah, if you added to the district to the end of that, it makes more sense to me. Then it takes the personalization out and it allows us to go to that policy, which is governed by law, which makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And then your interpretation fits that statement.
I think we should add that in because when you start talking about gifts to persons, to board members, to employees, you get into a different kettle of fish in a hurry. And look at 13 VSA 1102 when you start smithing.
Okay. So there's a couple of people interested in changing the language. So I don't know if Mike did withdraw and somebody introduced a new motion. I don't know.
Hint, hint.
I will withdraw my motion.
Does anyone have a new motion?
I would like to make a motion to add or to change. I can't scroll up, but item 11 of what section are you in?
2.8.
What?
13 VSA
2.8.
1102.
It's on your agenda too, 2.8.
2.8, number 11, to add or to change it to say, allow the board to be uninformed in a timely manner of all significant gifts to the district.
Someone want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion around that wording or about the policy itself?
Kevin's hand is up.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, the phrase uninformed in a timely manner seems senseless. I don't know how we could be uninformed in a timely manner. And then the word significant is undefined. So I think we're not really getting closer to having clarity in our statement.
Okay. Anyone else?
Barbara's hand is up.
Barbara?
Barbara, where'd you go?
Duh, microphone. Okay. I wanted to ask Brenda and Jean if they see any reasons not to add to the district part at the end. Is that going to tie anyone's hands?
No, for me, I think it does provide additional clarity. I don't see an issue with it. Brenda, do you?
No, I think it's better to, I'm sorry that I didn't know how it spun to the important conversations that you're having in regards to gifts received by employees. And just so you know, we have a conflict of interest policy. We have a purchasing policy. Anybody who has purchasing responsibility fills out an annual conflict of interest form. You can find any conflicts they might have. We have a whole process for that whole ability, so that we can feel confident that nobody is, giving resources away to their, second cousin twice removed. So it's good to have this conversation. I don't see any problems with making it clear that we're talking about gifts to the district itself.
Barbara?
Can I just tack a thing on? Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Jean. I wanted just to say that I think it's important to remember that the way the policies are written, while awkward, and they have terms that we don't specifically define because it's open to interpretation, which is why we do the compliance reports. Am I right that your reasonable interpretation, you provide your explanation of your interpretation of the policies? We go over that, and if we don't agree, we have discussions, or it goes from there.
Refine your policies like you're suggesting now.
Right. But if we were to define the word timely, I don't know, would we be making?
Well, if I may, Barbara, that's not the motion on the table right now.
Okay. Good point.
So the motion on the table is to just add 3 words to the end, which is to the board. Or to the district, excuse me, district. Is there any other discussion regarding this?
Yes.
Okay.
I wonder if, since people did not seem to understand about the $5,000 amount that's connected to federal and state regulation, is that something?
It's not actually. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the $5,000 is just what's in our policy. It's not necessarily federal or state. It's a number that a lot of people use to determine what a large enough gift is. So it is, a lot of people use that number, but it's not defined in federal law or state law saying that that's the number.
Okay,
So
I apologize.
I just wanted to verify.
I
No,
thought it
no,
was
I just
connected
wanted you
to
to be aware
something
of that.
larger that most of us did not know about. So we wouldn't have to go back and find what that number was. It would be there.
Right,
It's
yeah,
actually-
and it's, so.
It's actually in state law in which $5,000 or both shall be in prison more than 2 years or fine not more than $5,000. So the gifts to an officer, meaning the board or the employee, is pretty significant.
Bonnie's been trying to talk.
Then she should.
No, I was just going to suggest we call the question. I think there's a motion. I think we need to move this forward.
Okay. So, all right, then we're gonna go ahead and vote on the motion on the table, which is to change the wording for 2.811 to allow the board to be informed in a timely manner of all significant gifts to the district. So for all of those who approve that change, please use the green button. If you do not approve of the change, please use the red button. That would be great.
Did someone second?
The second had been done
Angela,
by Mike.
Mike, yeah.
Mike? Thank you.
Yep. And looks like Bill, I don't see you having, yes or no. You're saying yes? Okay,
Yes.
so it passes, with 1 no. So thank you for that. We will, make that change to the policy and, update our policy to reflect that change. Thank you for your lively discussion on that.
And thank you, Brenda, for joining us.
Yep, thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you for adjusting your schedule for me.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to bring us back up to executive limitations. I would like to make sure we get through the 2 monitoring reports, 2.2 and 2.5. We may push our own monitoring report 4.3 to our next meeting in January, just because of time at this point. But everyone should have had a chance to look over the monitoring reports with Jean's evidence. That's the word I'm looking for. Evidence in relation to the first monitoring report, which is 2.2, treatment of staff.
And so just a reminder, this is where my accountability comes into you on the policies that you set. So you've already had a chance to see the reasonable interpretation last meeting, and now I provided to you evidence. And if ever the board wanted to see a direct inspection, you would put it on the calendar and I would prepare a binder for you of this evidence. Although a lot of this particular one is online, and I say so.
I was looking for I saw them earlier. I didn't have any specific. Do you guys want to go through each item? They're not long. Most of the one on treatment of staff is all hyperlinks to our policies and or handbooks. As far as treatment of staff, I, for some reason, cannot get into that PDF.
It is fairly long. Is there anything that anybody feels is missing from the evidence? Okay, then.
Okay, it sounds good then. There it is. All right, so does someone want to make a motion as far as the monitoring report 2.2 to approve?
To accept.
Or accept, excuse me. Barbara, I'm seeing your hand raised. So are you making the motion, Barbara? Okay.
I move to accept the monitoring report.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Becky. So any other discussion regarding this? I probably should have started with that. But, hearing none, we'll go to vote. So all of those that accept 2.2 treatment of staff, please use your green button, or if you do not accept it, please press your red button.
You need
Okay. The only one I'm missing is Bill again.
I'm here,
Bill,
yes.
yeah, okay, sounds good. So again, it passes with 1 no. Everyone else accepted it. Thank you for that. We will move on to monitoring report 2.5, which is the emergency superintendent succession. That one also is short. Looks like she's, well, anyway, so before we go into discussion, can I get someone to make a motion to accept 2.5?
So moved.
Thank you, Bonnie. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, any discussion, any questions for Jean? I thought it was very detailed myself. I was also
You know
surprised
what
that,
to do when I win the lottery, Lori.
I know, well, I was kind of surprised that, the council, I have to set a date, time and date for a special board meeting, so good for me to find out that information. So, I'm on the phone. Sorry. Everybody talk while I shut my kids up.
Sorry. Any questions or any missing evidence you would have liked to have seen?
I'm just going to make the observation that while we're talking about superintendent succession, you should please stop coughing because you make us nervous.
It's fine. It's my asthma and my cat. I had it checked out yesterday. I'm negative. It's fine. Thank you, though.
Okay, good, good. Yes.
So it's kind of vague as the definition as to who will take the place. It says 2, but it lists off like 7 different people.
Well, it lists off like 3 or 4 different people, but yes.
Yeah.
So the way it is set up, it's a very good question. The assumption is that this is a temporary fill-in while the board seeks a new superintendent, right? It's not a long-term plan. You could choose any one of those people to be a long-term interim, but you know, when I win the lottery and decide to move to Timbuktu on a whim's notice, and you find yourself without a superintendent, because I don't think of negative scenarios, so I always win the lottery. Then tomorrow morning, you would need somebody, and you wouldn't have a somebody, nor with the expertise in the roles that we hire, is there a particular person who can do all of it. So we've set it up that our central office functions as a team. And even now, for example, when I went to Italy last year, that team had designated expertise areas that they were in charge of to make sure that the district was still in compliance and moving forward.
And I appreciate that, and I think that's an excellent idea. But I also feel that we should have a voice.
So the voice would be Kristen. The director of curriculum is the one who's appointed to be that one point person.
Okay. Thank you.
What if the your designated alternate happens to be in the same trouble you are and you both get caught on the islands?
Then we actually do have a chain of command. After Kristen, it would be Marcia. After Marcia, we would probably move to Jim Avery or Judy Pulsifer as the lead administrators in the district, longest term administrators in the district. And again, this would be temporary. Your chair would pull together a special board meeting, and you could appoint formerly retired superintendents who live in the area to step in for you.
I don't know.
You would contact, the superintendent's office and ask if there are other other retired superintendents who might step up. So this is intended to be temporary till the board steps in and develops the plan that you wish to develop.
Are you okay with licensing?
Yes. You mean in my plan?
Yes.
Yes, that's why it would be the curriculum director, the special ed director, or a principal.
All of whom hold administrator tickets.
They all hold administrator licenses, not necessarily superintendent licenses, although right now we are investing in Kristen in the superintendent's academy. So she is getting additional PD. But the agency would allow that. They would, if necessary, assign an emergency license to whom. With having an administrator's license, it would be easy to get an emergency superintendent license. It's an interesting, this is a policy that was really interesting for me to do because I had never really thought about it. So in doing the research, checking the laws, checking the processes, and especially the step-by-step part about the immediate steps plan, that all comes from the state laws. And writing it out then meant I needed to sit down and talk to everybody who was involved in it. And that was a really good exercise to do, which I would not have done if you had not had this policy and asked for a monitoring report.
Any other discussion?
We heard you, Lori, but your voice has become tinny now.
Good. I don't know why. Can you hear me better now?
No, you still sound tinny, but we hear you.
All right, well, I might switch over because it looks like I'm about ready to lose my.
Okay.
I apologize for going off camera.
We need to set you up with the technology to do this. This is poor.
Well, the reason why I don't have it on my computer in my office because of all of the financial data. So I apologize that I don't have all of the bells and whistles, but there's a reason for that.
It must be because your battery was dying because it's starting to come back, or it's trying to. And then we just lost her.
And she's still there on her computer. You just
she can still see us.
Right.
But she can't do anything.
This would be a time for us to act out. All she can do is see us. She can't do anything about it.
What's our emergency succession plan when our chair is unavailable?
Well,
Bonnie.
careful, Barbara, aren't you in?
It's supposed to be you. You're the clerk, right?
I'm the
clerk?
Me?
Or the vice?
Oh God, doesn't it go to the vice chair? Doesn't Bonnie take over now?
Yeah, it is Bonnie.
Yeah, okay,
Sorry, Bonnie.
thank you.
I forgot there was a vice.
That's why I'm sitting here very quietly, not saying a word.
It's if Charlene goes golfing that I have to take notes. That's what happens, I think.
Is she back yet?
Nope.
She was trying, but Bonnie, you want to move us along?
Sure.
She's
Are there any
testing us.
more? Are there any more questions? I wasn't sure if we finished up questions.
I didn't hear any.
Okay, if there are no questions,
Was
would
there
you?
a motion to accept?
We must have had a motion to discuss, didn't we?
Okay, Charlene says we did.
Yeah, I was going to say we had to have a motion to discuss. Okay, so if you use your buttons, please. A green would indicate yes. You accept the monitoring report, and red would indicate no. Bill, you all set? I can't, can anyone see Bill?
Yes.
He's giving him thumbs up.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, so we
Kevin, or people are unvoting now? Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. We're all set.
I'll abstain from this one.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Okay,
We
so
just accepted the monitoring report while you were gone.
awesome. Thank you very much for that.
After we discuss the succession plan for the board chair.
I'm all set for that tonight, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, we didn't know what to do if the board chair fell off the island, so.
Oh, well, Bonnie Bourne jumps in.
Yeah.
No, I was sitting here very quietly because they almost had Barbara convinced it was her, and I wasn't going to say a word.
Okay, so we're going to skip over the monitoring report for 4.3 agenda planning at the moment, just in the for time's sake, and if we can get back to it, we will. But let's move on. We started the governance process. We did the first 3 bullets. So our next bullet is representation on the para bus driver negotiations committee.
So I'm asking once again, if anybody would step forward. Those negotiations are going to start in January. Jeff Spalding, who sat on the teacher committee, does not do this one because Barstow is not a part of the para bus driver negotiations. So that leaves Lisa and Brenda, who have indicated they're willing to continue, but it really would behoove the Otter Valley Board, I believe, to have another seat on there. Lisa is asking to speak, Lori?
Sure, she can.
Hi, everybody. So I do think that it is important to have somebody on the board to be present on that committee. I know that it's not
Oh, did she freeze?
past paras and bus drivers, but pretty smoothly.
We missed most of what you said, Lisa.
Oh, Angela, I thought you were going to.
You froze.
So I think, well, essentially what she's saying is it would be very important for one of us as board members on this board to be on that committee. So if someone is willing to join that, can you tell us the time commitment, Lisa, just so that people understand what the time commitment is? And is it Zoom meetings right now that you're having?
Yes. It's Zoom.
Yes.
It starts in January. It's roughly a 2-hour meeting. The schedule has not been set other than the initial meeting. But I think generally it takes us 4 to 5 meetings. Welcome, Greg. We're looking for a representative of the board to sit on the para negotiation that start in January. So
I think you should just tell him that he got elected because he wasn't here.
I'll just have one of the new persons elected in March.
Well, we really need someone now.
Ideally, we'll be done by March if we're lucky. Lisa has been representing you. Lisa's residence has changed. She can continue to represent you if you appoint her, but I do think it leaves the board in an awkward position to have only Lisa. Plus, it's a lot for her to take on. I really appreciate that. And then Lisa and I also discussed the fact that if you don't have direct representation on the committee, then you'll take whatever the committee recommends, right? Right, Lisa?
I do.
Lisa points me.
Huh?
I said I saw you write my name in the chat. So my question is, how often is it meeting?
Well, the schedule.
What do you think?
What the schedule had been is about every 2 weeks, and the schedule is set by the committee, by the 2 committees together. And it has been Zoom. I expect it'll continue to be Zoom. Has not yet started up.
This last one went really, really smoothly. Like really smoothly.
Okay.
The first
definitely being
there's a board planning session. Lisa, I don't know when that is. Isn't it early? The first negotiation session, the only one that's scheduled, is January 18th, which is a Monday. Doesn't have to stay on Mondays though. And I'm pretty sure that we have a planning session the week of the 4th, and it's not on my calendar, so I have to check it out.
I could probably do it as long as we can be flexible for sure.
Thank you, Becky.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky. If someone else would like to join, feel free to do so at any time. I think it would be important to have that. Okay, so we're going to move on. Our next one is discuss the weighted study legislation. So we actually were invited by the Burlington School District into a weighted study, what was it called? The Weighted Study Coalition. So before we get into that, Jean, can you discuss exactly what the weighted study is? Because I don't think everybody knows what that is.
So last year, the legislature asked the University of Vermont to look at how school spending is designed. We receive our funds through a formula that is a weighted formula, meaning that if a student is a student, if they are a kindergarten student, they are only 0.46 of a student. If they are a high school student, they are 1.25 of a student. If they're in poverty, if they're free and reduced lunch, or if they're an English language learner, they have a different weight to them as well. This weighted formula was designed, gosh, Bill, what do you think? Late 90s?
No, much earlier.
Okay, much earlier. And so the legislature wanted to revisit the equity of that. And ultimately, and so UVM did provide a study and gave a variety of different options. The legislature is expected to take it up again this year. They have not really, COVID kind of distracted them from delving into it. Burlington's interest, of course, is that ELL students would be weighted higher, and they're seeking other districts to join them in advocacy for it. I'm hesitant to advise you at this point because the year that was used in the UVM study was like 3 years ago. And the pie, the important thing to understand is the pie doesn't change. Just how the pie is prorated is what changes. And so ultimately there are going to be losers and there are going to be winners. Burlington thinks, based on the 3-year-old piece, that you are going to be winners, and that's why you were invited to join their advocacy. I don't know if that is true or not. I do not know. I believe that UVM is going to be asked to update their numbers, and the Superintendent's Association has been delving into it deeper. And by the time I need to know, I will. I don't know today. If we end up not being the winner of the pie, I think ultimately the equity concept is the right concept. And then the advocacy would need to be around, how do you phase this in so that your constituency is not harmed with an immediate jump if you have an immediate jump in taxes because the weighting formula changes? You know, is it a thoughtful rollout as opposed to just an overnight type rollout? If that helps, my recommendation would be, I don't know what you need, Lori, but as it becomes more real in the legislature this spring and we have more updated numbers, then Brenda could come and really walk through what it means to us so that you would have an idea of what you'd like to do. But she honestly can't do that yet with the numbers that exist in the study.
So I will tell you that I went to the first meeting that they had, and I think they want our board to join, and I feel like I want to see where it goes and not necessarily just jump in, because there's a lot of there's people that are on this study that just got squished together as part of the state pushing them together as a new district, and so they're touchy about that, and they make that well known. So I think I would just like to monitor it right now. So if everybody is okay with me just kind of monitoring and not necessarily joining, but just listening to what they have to say and then come back to you and then make a final decision, I'm happy to do that. The next meeting that they have scheduled is for December 17th. They're hoping to have more information at that point.
I would like to monitor that, if you will, and I'll volunteer to do that, but I understand being able to keep an arm's length if necessary too. But this is an area in which I've done a lot of work and kind of enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay, I will send you the link to the meeting if you'd like, Bill, so that you can check it out as well.
Sure.
And I can send it to anybody else who'd like to also see what it's all about. I think I'd like to read the weighted study first before I really commit. So,
and I can send that out again.
Okay.
Lori, before you move on too far, don't forget that we are being asked, or it's recommended that we take a motion on our annual meeting.
Yep. Yes, it's actually, since the next item is the board report for the annual district report, we can also.
Lori, I had my hand up for the last item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go for it.
Thanks. I just wanted to thank Bill.
Oh, you're cut out there, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Kevin, I think I was lowering your hand and I muted you. I'm sorry about that. Can you?
It's okay.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so the first thing, I don't know if any of you missed it, I wanted to thank Bill for his expertise in that and his willingness to look into it for us, as well as you. It's a general statement. I think we need to be cautious about something that shifts a finite pie to the richest county in the state. There's more than one way to define equity, and I think the equity of our underprivileged students is what we need to be concerned about. And I'm a little cautious about, what it looks like now as opposed to 3 years ago. I'm really interested in what the long-term effect would be, and that's again why I'm really cautious about agreeing to shift money to Burlington. They've got more money than any of us, and we need to watch out for our poor kids. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
One of the things that's going to come out in that study is the rural coefficient that got slam dunked in Act 46. That's going to come back, and that will have a direct influence.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we are going to move on to the board report for the annual district report. And also at the same time, we'll discuss the annual meeting. How's that sound, Jean?
Okay.
Okay, so the board report for the annual district report, I don't know exactly what that means, so I'm turning it over to you to begin with.
It really is just a reminder that there is a board report that will have to be written by the second week of January. That goes in the annual district report. We usually just put it on here as a reminder. Often, usually the chair writes it. You could ask people what they'd like in it, or you could draft something and let people see it, or you could just simply write it.
Usually I just simply write it, although I'm usually late every year doing that. But
oh, did I say mid-January? I meant to say mid-December.
Yeah, I know, right, exactly. So if people have a problem with me just writing it and putting it in there, then we can discuss somehow writing it all together, I suppose.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and write it. And all I really do is I just discuss what we've talked about throughout the course of the year, any accomplishments that we've made. And I thank everyone. I usually thank board members who are going off the board that we know of. I usually thank parents and teachers and staff for everything that they do. And I thank the voters for everything that they do to help us keep going. So it's usually nothing alarming. And I usually try to be a little funny, which probably I'm not. So if anybody has a problem with that, speak now or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, I will go ahead and write it and get that to Melinda.
We're proud of you.
Okay. Okay, and then the annual meeting. So do you want to discuss that too, Jean?
Sure. So the Vermont School Board Association sent a message to all of you pointing out that the legislature passed 2 laws that gave temporary changes to Vermont's election laws because of the pandemic. And they are recommending that your board should address election issues at this meeting. So I followed up, I did some research with our attorney and with the SBA for more information on what they're thinking. And basically you have an annual meeting in February that requires people to come together. Also, candidates who are interested in running for the board normally have to go around and collect signatures on a petition. In both cases, because of the current pandemic situations, the legislature would like neither of those things to happen. So they already took care of the candidate piece. Candidates this year will not need to go collect signatures. And we're currently working on the forms to give the town clerks, but they will basically need to just file with the town clerk their desire to run. However, your annual meeting, I sent you 2 recommended motions that came from our attorney. One is to move that the 2021 annual meeting move to Australian ballot for any action. The actual wording of the motion is in the email that I sent to you, and I think Charlene also. And that means that normally at your annual meeting, you vote on your moderator, your clerk, and your treasurer, compensation for those positions, compensation for the school board. All of that would be part of the Australian ballot on town meeting day. The existing positions would continue until somebody new is elected. In particular, we were concerned about the district clerk piece because the district clerk usually gets elected at the annual meeting and then helps manage the actual election. Luckily for you, it's been Sue, it's been fine, but that would, the current person would continue on. The second motion is because your charter calls for commingling of votes, Dina recommends for clarity that you make a motion around that too, that the articles presented at the annual meeting be commingled. Regardless of whether or not they're commingled, it's still a majority rules. Not commingling could cause a great deal of strife and tension in your communities potentially. And commingling is what is in the charter that you have written. So the request from VSBA is to act on your annual meeting. The attorney has drafted the two motions for you to consider acting on.
Okay, so what's everyone's pleasure? Does someone want to make a motion on the first motion, which is to do the annual meeting by Australian ballot?
I just want to ask a question first.
Sure.
Want to make,
well, I'd really like a motion first, if it's specific, and then you can ask your question. Is it specific to one or the other, Kevin? Your question?
it's specific to both.
Okay. Well, let's get the motion for one of them, and then you can ask your question. So who would like to make a motion about Australian ballot?
Bill just did.
Okay, and a second? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, so now that we have the second, Kevin, you had a question. Go for it.
Yeah, I just want to make triple sure that these are only for 2021, and that we're not hacking into a long-term change.
I sent you the motions by email. So specifically, Charlene, are you able to read them? I can, but
I can't find them in my email right now.
Okay. The first one is pursuant to Act 162. A motion was made by Bill Mathis and seconded by Bonnie Bourne to conduct the Otter Valley Unified Union 2021 annual meeting using Australian ballot voting method for all articles.
Thanks.
And then the second one, if you choose to make the motion, is that the vote for all articles presented at the 2021 annual meeting be commingled before being counted.
Okay, so this is specific for only 1 year. It is not, it will not go forward.
correct.
Okay. So is there any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing nobody waving their hands, all of those that approve the motion to move the annual meeting to Australian ballot, please press your green key or press your red key if you do not want to do that. Okay, looks like everyone, and Bill, are you saying yes to this? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you for that. As for the second motion, if someone wants to move the motion that says, I move that the votes for all articles presented at the 2021 annual meeting be commingled before being counted. Someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, Becky?
Second.
Second from Greg, thank you. Any discussion in regards to that? Not seeing anybody raise their hand or make any moves. So we'll go ahead and vote. All of those that approve the motion, please press your green key. Otherwise, please press your red one to indicate no. Just okay. And Bill, you're saying yes? Okay, thank you. So that also passes unanimously. Thank you for that. So our annual meeting will now be a Zoom meeting. Is that correct, Jean?
Right, and you can still have an annual Zoom meeting that's an informational meeting on the budget or takes questions. You only cannot take action at that meeting. But I do recommend, and I assume that you will still want to hold that annual meeting. And, you know, since it's virtual, you may actually get more people willing to come to it. I don't know. Be interesting to see.
Okay. So I hate to tell you guys this, but it is 8 o'clock. So I'm going to ask that if someone wants to make the motion that we extend our meeting for maybe 20 minutes or so. I don't think we're going to, maybe a half hour if we have to do executive session.
You do have to do executive session.
Okay, well, yeah. So Mike's making that motion. So if someone would like to second it.
I'll
okay.
second.
So all of those approved, please press your green button. Red to indicate no. Okay, and Bill, you're saying yes? Okay, so we are extending our meeting by 30 minutes. Thank you for that. So the next item on our agenda is board member recruitment. Open board seats and terms up for election in March. So I think we've talked about this the last couple of meetings.
Right, I don't think it's just a reminder that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So if anybody is interested in getting a board, coming on the board, we do have a meeting scheduled for January 6th for people to come and check out what policy governance is about and if you think it might be for you, and to join the Otter Valley board. So, and we'll have more information about that at our next meeting. But right now it's tentatively scheduled for January 6th. Okay. Annual board work plan review. This might be where we talk about where we want to put our restorative justice professional development that we talked about earlier in our meeting. I don't see it happening much before February. I hate to say it, but unless you think.
You had asked me to invite Outright Vermont for your second January meeting, and that process is underway. I have a tentative confirmation of your January 20th date.
Okay. So yeah, so I think this is going to probably have to move to February.
Yeah.
At this point.
And the interesting thing in February, though, is
the annual meeting.
The 3rd and the 17th, and then you meet again for your annual meeting.
I think that'll be okay. We can do it on the 17th.
Excellent.
Okay. So we will put that on there for February 17th to discuss the restorative justice process. Okay. So communications and support to the board, superintendent's informational report. Anything you'd like to point out?
No, it was mostly informational around the action that you already took tonight. So unless there are any questions, I won't take your time.
Okay. Anyone have questions for Jean about?
I also, well, I guess there is one thing. I also, as I had informed you about the governor's question about multi-household gatherings, the determination to take Monday to figure out what impact we have. We do have a number of families, not a huge number, but a number of families and a very few number of staff who have indicated that they were not able to comply with that order, who are quarantining. We were able to cover the staff, so that was not an issue in opening schools. We appreciate the honesty of both staff and parents when that happens. Otter Valley was delayed to open because we were not getting responses from parents, and we could not manage over 200 people not answering, and we just couldn't pull that many kids aside. So we gave it another 2 days And we do have answers as of 5 o'clock with from all but 30 or 35 people. And we'll be able to pull those kids aside if we don't get answers by the morning to check things out. So Otter Valley will be back open in person tomorrow. I'm watching what's happening over the next couple of weeks before I make a determination on how we're going to handle January 4th.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for Jean? Barry?
Yeah, Jean, anything more on what the future may hold for that COVID case in Lothrop? I mean, what the plans might be or next steps?
I don't believe that we're going to have any next steps. The positive case that we were informed of today at Lothrop School did not affect the school. The symptoms began over the holiday, which means that, and because Tuesday was the last day of school, the Department of Health does not feel that there's any impact on the school. The family is quarantining, so I don't believe there's going to be any impact on us. Had it been a child or an adult who was actually in the school at the time that symptoms began, then the Department of Health would have advised us, would have gone through the contact tracing with us, and would have been in consultation with us on whether or not we would have needed to shut down a classroom or a wing or a grade level or what we would have needed to do. But I don't expect any fallout from this first case.
Okay, thank you.
Barbara's hand is up too.
Yep, go ahead, Barbara.
It's not a question, it's just a comment that I think it's important to acknowledge you, Jean, that I believe you're giving good guidance through a very complicated set of circumstances and continuing to do so with good communication and clarity of communication and timeliness of communication. And I just thought I'd like to give you that feedback.
Thank you, Barbara. I very much appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments for Jean or questions for Jean? Okay, as always, thank you very much for all you do for us.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is that we should schedule a meeting on January 13th as a special meeting for the budget. It will be a Zoom meeting, 6 o'clock again. So that would be the Wednesday in between our two normal board meetings. If we don't need it, we can cancel it. But if everybody's okay with that, we will put it on our work plan.
Okay.
Anybody not okay with that? All right, then we will put that on our work plan for January 13th. Our next board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 16th at 6 o'clock. It is a Zoom meeting. We will be discussing equity again. We will also be discussing
budget.
Thank you, budget, that thing.
We'll have a start with the public forum on the budget.
Right. Okay. There is a self-evaluation that went out tonight, so please make sure you fill it in, preferably within the next 24 hours, even tonight after you log off if you get a chance. We will go into executive session. We won't have any action to take tonight, correct?
There is no action to take, but we'd like to fill you in on the tentative agreement with the teachers.
Okay.
And Claire, I think you're still with us. This would mean that it would be time to say goodnight to you. And Lori, you might want to go into executive session with Lisa Page and me.
Yep, that was my plan. I just wanted to make sure that we covered all the bases. I wanted to make sure Charlene knew that. Charlene, you could probably add 20 minutes to our meeting, but there'll be no action for the minutes. And so we will go ahead and go into executive session at 8:08. I just want to make sure it's just all of us here. We'll wait till Charlene leaves, and we need to stop the recording
Need a
of the
motion.
meeting.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks for the motion. Yeah, okay. Who'd like to make the motion to go into executive session?
I move. So moved.
Okay, and I see Mike making a second.
So Lori, will you let me know, or Jean, the time? Or
Yep, I will.
Yep.
You want me to just add 2 people as making an adjournment? Or do you
Yeah.
want that?
Yeah, we'll do that. Yep.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.